Good morning, you guys. It's your boy Ben Mahari here, representing Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to all of my subscribers out there. Hope you guys had a good Memorial Day weekend. Spend time with your families, man, and basically staying safe out there. You know what I mean? Times are getting rough out there, so prepare yourself for the worst. That's all pretty much I can tell you. But with that being said, we are finally here in the NBA Finals, and it is pretty much one of the most intriguing matchups that you're going to find in this year's NBA Finals and then we've seen in the last couple of years. Um, this is a matchup between both of the best offenses in the NBA, as we pretty much have known. But another glaring thing about this matchup between the Warriors and the Celtics, this is the first time since 1996 that we had two of the best defensive teams in the NBA facing against one another. You know what I'm saying? With the Warriors at number two and the Celtics at number one in terms of overall defensive efficiency. Now, when you look at both sides of the ledger here, the Warriors are back in the finals for the first time since 2019 when they lost to the Toronto Raptors. And this is their sixth time in the finals in the past 8 years. Now, for the Celtics, on the other hand, this is their 22nd appearance in the NBA Finals in franchise history, their first appearance to the finals since 2010 with the original Celtic big three of Garnett, Pierce, and Allen. Now, obviously, there's no big three in Boston either way, but you also have a dynamic duo of both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who are two up and coming young studs against, possibly future Hall of Famers on one side of the ledger, too. But when you look at both of these teams here, let's look at the Warriors first of all. Unlike their dominant runs between 2014 and 2019, this wasn't an easy track to return to the finals because we have to remember 2 years ago, the Warriors were the worst team in the NBA. They were going through a lot of injuries. They went through the loss of Kevin Durant. Klay Thompson went through an injured knee. And then, Curry had an injured arm and pretty much was gone for most of the season, a couple of years ago. And then also the fact that, Klay was on the verge of coming back from that knee injury. He injured in the 2019 finals. Then he tore his Achilles and then had to miss another season. So it was pretty much it was a very difficult time for the Golden State Warriors. But give credit where credit is due to their great organization. They were able to rebuild the team around the talents, around the younger talent of Jordan Poole, who was pretty much a real true diamond in the rough. I kind of knew how talented he was back in Michigan, but I didn't expect him to be this talented like this with the Warriors. He's really been one of the true, hidden stars that the Warriors find, excellent talent with, and you got to give some credit to that. And then also pulling off the trade of Andrew Wiggins, who's playing like the Wiggins that should have been in Minnesota, but the problem is when you play in Minnesota, it doesn't inspire you to play as hard. But when you're playing with the Warriors with championship level expectations, it changes you. And also Kevon Looney as well. Also in the fact that, you know, with the Boston Celtics too as well, you also have to consider the fact that, you know, in in a huge, event of things here, they basically built the team around Jason Tatum and, Jaylen Brown. You know what I mean? And so they basically, improved their defense, and their offense slowly started to click. And then once, keep this in mind, they were basically below 500. And then after the All-Star break, that's when the team started kicking it in high gear. They were playing better defensively. They were in sync together. And then Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum basically took turns being the 1-2 punch for the offense, and pretty much that's what's really led them to this point. And so, you know, the Celtics had a lot on their plate. They had to pretty much come back from a 3-2 deficit against the Milwaukee Bucks. All right. And then they were up 3-2 against the Heat. They lost game six, but then they rebounded in a major way in game seven against Miami to pretty much punch their ticket to the finals. Now, here's one of the things that is going to play an X factor for the Celtics. Well, first of all, they get finally some rest. And, they get at least 3 days off in between, game seven against Miami and in game one of these finals. Because remember, Boston played, two 7-game series against the defending champion Bucks and then the Miami Heat. And Marcus Smart has been pretty much dealing with a quad injury. Robert Williams missed some time in April with right meniscus surgery, and has pretty much experienced knee soreness because of a bone bruise after colliding with Giannis in Game 3 of that second round series against the Bucks. And Jason Tatum, he's been a fantastic player, but he's been averaging over 41 minutes a game over the past two series. And Brown and Al Horford have combined to pretty much played over 38 minutes per game for each player. So all together, all three of these guys have been logging at least 44 minutes in those two in that 7-game series against the Bucks, and then the same thing against the Heat too as well. So pretty much the rest, it was pretty much well needed. Now, because of the fact that the Celtics players as a whole have never experienced being in the NBA Finals, this could be a possible lack of experience. Will these guys, be tentative with the big lights of an NBA Finals? We don't know that. And, there's sometimes certain young players, loves, these kind of moments in the big stage. But we also consider the fact that history's shown that even young teams who were, who figured it out during the playoffs, all of a sudden when the finals, come on, they get stage fright. Just look back at the Magic back in 1995 as an historical example of that. But, you know, the Celtics throughout the entire postseason have thrived, when they were able to jump on a big lead and pretty much smother down on their opponents with their terrific defense. But when it comes down to closer games, that's when they started getting a little bit tight a bit. So we'll see if that'll be the case. But to me, I don't think inexperience will be a factor here. To me, it's about how well the Celtics defense, can contain the dominant perimeter shooting of the Warriors, and can they dominate the offensive glass. That to me is what's going to be so important, you know, in this series. And also, the other thing is that you also have to consider the fact that, you know, Golden State does a lot of, switching on defense. How will they adjust to that? Will they be able to use it to their advantage? Because they did not seen a team that does a lot of excellent switching of defenses like the Warriors do. So we'll see how that's going to be the case. Now, on the other side of the ledger here, you also got the Golden State Warriors. You know what I mean? With their dynamic, 3-point shooting, duo of Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. And then also the young players that I mentioned earlier. But the big thing for me is this: Gary Payton Jr. Now, remember, Gary Payton Jr. was pretty much emerged himself as a lockdown defender and was pretty much getting a lot of, good rotational minutes during the postseason. And he found himself, earning a starting spot before he injured his elbow because of a dirty foul by Memphis's, Dylan Brooks. But the good news is he's basically made tremendous progress on that injury, and it's likely that he's going to return for the NBA Finals. The critical thing is how well will he do it defensively? Because even though Golden State is famous for their offense, I mean, the big thing is how they will start their defense. And having Peyton in the presence inside in the paint and on the perimeter really is a key factor in this series. And also the issue is that turnovers. There are times in these playoffs where the Warriors pretty much throw the ball all over the gym. And the biggest thing that is really surprising to me when you watch the Warriors in their playoff run, they've been averaging at least 14.8 turnovers per game in the playoffs. That is fifth worst among the 16 teams in this year's postseason. All right. So it doesn't, to me, that's a huge factor when you look into this thing, because the thing what the Celtics like to do is that they also like to trap as well, especially in the backcourt. And when they can force turnovers, they can convert those turnovers into fast break points. In the 4 losses in the playoffs, they averaged about 16.3 turnovers per game for 20.8 points. That's like the third most turnovers and for the fifth most points allowed in this year's postseason. If the Warriors are going to win this game, win this series in totality, they have to cut down on their turnovers to around 13 turnovers a game and give up at least 13 points off of those turnovers. We know that the Warriors like to play fast, but they do tend to get reckless. So to me, they have to cut down on the turnovers and they're going to have a chance, to win the series. And also, the Splash Brothers must have a big series too. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If they don't shoot well in this series, they're not going to win the championship. And that's pretty much the bottom line to this. But the way I look at this series here, man, is a very intriguing series. But to me, I'm going to go with the experience of the Golden State Warriors. They've been there before, they know what it takes. The Celtics, as a team, are in it for the first time, in their respected, careers. I'm talking about the players, not the franchise as a whole. So I'm going to go with the Golden State Warriors to defeat the Boston Celtics in 6 games. I think that, the Celtics, with their talent that they have, they're going to win at least 2 games in this series. And it's just only a matter of time before the Warriors, will figure them out and pretty much, deal with them in 6 games. And hopefully this is the time that, Steph Curry can win, the NBA Finals, most valuable player award. Of all the championships that he's won thus far in his career, that's the only award that he hasn't accomplished yet. So we'll see how this series turns out, but it should be a fantastic series between some young studs against a team that is still partially at their peak. You know what I mean? But would love to win some championship before that door closes shut. So it's going to be a very intriguing series. I'm excited, and it's going to happen this Thursday with Game 1, obviously on ABC in Golden State. But before those finals begin, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What do you see in this series, and who do you think is going to win this entire series? And with that, I'm out. Peace.